Paul, you're on day 4 of a 4 days, I don't want to call it break, but 4 days off between games. Just was wondering a couple things about that break. One, did it come at a good time for you guys when weighing, rest and relaxation versus chemistry and some good work you'd been putting forth prior to the stop? And whether with only 2 games between games moving forward through the rest of the regular season, how that might change how you guys prepare.
Yeah, we've got 2 more 3-day blocks, I think.
Okay.
To the end of the year. But other than that, I mean, we're going to go about 8 weeks with 1 2-day block. So we're going to, you know what, Jeff, a lot of this is new to us, right? You'll get a block off during the regular season, but your schedule's not overly heavy. We had a bit of a rest coming off 6 and 9, and we absolutely needed it. That's the 5 and 7 is the toughest you see. So we needed that block, and I think on this one we just kind of looked at it and said, you know what, we're not going to get an opportunity to rest our team very much. So there's a whole bunch of guys that actually did skate on the off day, but that's on their own, right? They wanted to touch pucks. It was just a open ice kind of thing, no coaches kind of idea. But this is new, right? So all of this now shifts to recovery. We'll go from now, and I think at the end of February we get a 3-day, and then we don't get one till April. So we'll take as much rest in the days that we can. I like the idea that we've moved into a really kind of optional morning skate mentality. I think that we've got guys starting to understand some guys need to skate no matter how much they've played. That's how they feel. There are guys that are good not skating in the morning. They play well that night. So this is an opportunity for these players individually to kind of get to know their own bodies and get to know their own game. And I think there can be a big payoff with that. So you'll see some guys that probably you would be surprised that are going to morning skate, and they'll morning skate every day. And there'll be guys that'll get into a real nice routine with it.
And we'll go next to Ted Wyman from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Ted.
Hey, Paul, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the coach's challenge for offside that happened in Columbus yesterday and the way it was handled.
Wow. You know what? You always have good intentions, right? And that coach's challenge is it's done way more good in getting it right than bad, right? So they had a mistake, and they fixed it, I guess, as best they could. And it will bring scrutiny, right? And then it will force, or maybe a better word, it will encourage a review of the program, and that's how things get better, right? You have a mistake, you get better. You're forced to look at something a different way. So we've gotten more offsides goals that shouldn't have gone in the net pulled back, and every once in a while you get one of these things that you didn't see coming happens, and it makes you better in the long run.
Go next to John.
And I'm glad it wasn't our team.
We'll go next to John Madish from The Score. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Paul. I have a kind of a macro coaching question for you. So I'm wondering how your approach to defending defensemen has changed over the years. Like, you've got these modern D who are so involved in the transition game, so involved in the offensive zone compared to, say, 10 years ago. Are the X's and O's different now in respect to defending these guys?
Everything is different, and that is a major change in the game. So you go back even further than that. If you were everybody had kind of one puck moving defenseman, you had to, and then some teams had the luxury of maybe 2 guys that could really move the puck, and those guys would get a little involved in the offense. And then you had 4 guys that never got 5 feet past the offensive blue line, right? I mean, it was off the wall, off the glass, and they were there to clean the front of their net out and play a basic game. So just even if you wanted to take it to the power play, right? There was a point in time where you almost had 2 guys up on the blue line that were defensemen. So now you've gotten to the point of interchanging where the defensemen go in on an offensive rush and they actually don't come out. They'll stay down until the play's dead. So it's changed D zone coverage. You're seeing that this year as much as any year, but I think in the last couple of years, 3 and 4 players in motion high in the offensive zone. And that's why you're starting to see this kind of flip flop. You know, there were more pure man-to-man teams in the D zone. And then there's it's not a zone defense, but it's an idea. D zone coverages have changed, and maybe and that's all I think based on you have defensemen in the league now that can play as forwards and can be really, really effective. So skilled, so fast. Their lateral movement so good. It's yeah, absolutely changed the game from breakouts to neutral zone counters to the play in the offensive zone across the line. It's changed drastically.
We'll go next to Brian Munz from TSN 1290. Go ahead, Munzie.
Paul, you've had a couple of days to take a look at this lineup, and I'm looking at your forwards, the guys that you've been able to put together here, and we see yesterday for the first time. What's the key for you as a coach to getting them enough ice? And you touched on it a little bit yesterday, but as you look at it here, managing those guys so you can run everybody effectively.
Yeah, and that's going to be the challenge, right? I'm going to very probably run this for a few games and make an assessment on it. Intensity, frequency, and intensity. How short we run our shifts will allow players to get off the bench sooner, and that triggers something for them mentally. They feel that they are in the game. And can you take, can you increase your level of play? Can you come to the bench just as tired on a 40-second shift as you would on a 55? Well, that means you're going quite a bit harder on a 40-second shift. So the intensity we play with and the length of our shifts are going to be the two critical pieces. And it's not even just the players accepting it. It's keeping the players at a high level, right? There'll be a whole bunch of these guys now that are going to get 2 or 3 minutes shaved. And that I think they can deal with. But when you got timeouts and you get into a game where they have unusual whistles, like a lot of them, it's going to be a challenge. And those first couple of games that we played at home here to Calgary, we went long stretches without a whistle, without a stoppage in play. We blew through a number of TV timeouts and got into the second timeout before a whistle went. Players don't mind the 4-line rotation then, right? They feel like they're in the game. Some of it you can't control. The whistles, the timing of timeouts, back-to-back penalties, that'll be a challenge. Like Scheifele didn't get off the ice much in the first period last game, and certainly in the first 5 minutes. So I double shifted them coming out of that just to get them into the game and get them back going. But I'm going to have a whole bunch of lines now that feel like that if you're on the power play, those guys can play a little less 5-on-5 and you can get the other guys off. If you're killing a lot of penalties, you can run your power play guys a little bit more. Frequency, intensity, though, will be the deciding elements to whether this is smooth or not.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hi, Paul. Sorry, some technological issues on my side here. Paul, you've had a couple of days now with Pierre-Luc. With him coming off that uncomfortable situation with his coach and everything in Columbus that happened, considering he's still a very young man, are there things you need to take into consideration as his new coach to maybe help him bury or get past a situation like that?
I think we just move forward together, and you do it in the manner that you always have. Everybody's got a different style, different set of circumstances, right? You've got young, really skilled players kind of coming into the league, and you're relying on them to win, and they're not ready maybe to help you when they're 19 or 20, and then you hit 22 and 23, and they've got more experience. I think what Pierre-Luc's experience in Columbus is really going to help him over the course of his career, and he's certainly going to be able to move into a leadership point when we get another young guy in that's finding his way in the NHL a challenge. So there won't be any change in terms of how I deal with him. I'm aware of the situation, but you can fix all those things by just moving forward, right? Deal with your day to day instead of spending much time thinking about your yesterday. And he worked hard today. He's getting to know the guys, and everything seems good.
We'll go next to Sarah Lesky from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, you've spoken a lot about pairings that you're interested in seeing with respect to your forwards. And I think for Connor, this will be playing with Dubois, be the third center now that he'll have played in this kind of short season. What do you think it is about Connor and Dubois, or what do you hope skill set wise and style of play that can complement each other and maybe have success.
Kyle's game, I think you saw it in the last Calgary game, when he's on, and we liked it in that game, he can just change what the other players he's playing with see. Right, he gets that outside speed, he gets into holes, it pulls the defense off. If you can put him with a player that can move the puck a little bit, find him into those holes, and then come in behind him, he just opens the ice up for those guys. So, I mean, I've seen him with a bunch of different guys. I don't think that Kyle doesn't necessarily have to rely on a bunch of people around him to have him have a great game, right? He's unique in that. He's not a guy that, I mean, we put 5 guys on the ice, they all need each other and they all need to know what they're doing. But Kyle doesn't need a lot of help to be great. He can do a lot of that stuff as a winger, almost on his own or into holes. So his goal the other night, our D zone coverage is right. We got a bunch of switch offs. Stas does a great job, and then he just times that coming into that puck and strips it and steals it. So we need a certain amount of good things to happen for any player to succeed, but Kyle can generate that almost on his own. Doesn't really matter as much who he plays with.
And just a couple more for Coach. We'll go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Paul, just to go back to the 4 forward lines that you have now and your kind of stated desire to have that range between 13 and 17 minutes in a perfect world. When was the last time you had that kind of an arrangement when you were behind the bench? And were there any initial difficulties in some of your players that were used to playing 21, 22 minutes, shaving it down to?
Yeah. Well, we've already started the process here, and that was one of our goals this year, is to get a better handle on our shift length, and we're markedly better than we were at the start of the year. The closest thing I think that you get to this is on your back-to-back nights or in your heavy schedules. You'll run the bench. You're always coaching to win the night that you're playing for sure, but you have an idea that you're either going into back-to-back or you're coming out. So you have some experience that. But I mean, the majority of my time in the first 15 years, the 4th line barely saw the ice because we were fairly thin. So we ran almost a 3-line rotation, and that was in the East. I don't think you can do that in the West. I think you need your entire bench to go. So this is as much about finding pairs that you like. I've got, and I do have another place that I expect that we're going to go. I don't know how long. It might be sooner than later, but where you would get to 3 lines that are maybe a little bit heavier loaded. So we've got some injuries that we're still kind of waiting on before I get to that next level. I'm not suggesting that a 4-line as it's structured now is going to last 6 weeks. I'm getting a look at some people together. And then that will help us build what we want to build going forward.
And final question to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Afternoon, Paul. Anything stick out from the Battle of Alberta that was different from the first 3 games of the mini series with Calgary for you?
You know, those intense rivalries are always different, right? The physicality in the game, the heaviness of the forechecks down the walls, the battle on pucks, as it's related to other, games they've had together. I don't know. I think the thing that keeps, I think there's a different kind of intensity in any of these series that we're playing this year. It's different. If you had an 82 game schedule like this in one division, we might be right back to the 1970s and the 80s and see full on bench brawls, right? Because you got November and you're going to make your point because you might be playing that team in April. I think the shortness of the schedule and the value of the 2 points and not wanting to put the other team on the power play, because that the awareness of the value of each game is probably going to keep all of these games a little bit more civil. When you can't be out there making a point and risk losing the 2 points.